we navigate this new terrain. Again, Brett Provenzano here, Superintendent of Fairport Schools. If for some reason we lose connection or we don't, have a clear signal here with our Facebook live stream, please go over to our YouTube channel, our Fairport YouTube channel. You can find that out on Twitter. We'll be tweeting that out there just to make sure that people know that they can get to us in many different forums if Facebook Live is not what they feel comfortable with, or if we lose connection with Facebook Live. YouTube Live is where we will be going through our Fairport YouTube Live channel.
And Brent, this is also archived, so if they need to watch it at a later date, they can, correct?
Yeah, that's why, yep, and it's archived here on Facebook Live, and it's also archived on our YouTube channel. Thank you very much.
Great.
And I think, we're just waiting to see how many people start coming in and getting a sense of, the lobby getting filled so we can move forward with our conversation tonight about transitioning, the eventual transition to school as we come off of our pause, hopefully summer or fall. And we'll be talking about those details as we move through this town hall this evening. Waiting for Mr. Extant to give us a little cue as to how many, we got people coming in?
We got 95 in.
95, that's excellent. Again, welcome everybody. My name is Brett Provenzano, Superintendent of Fairport Schools. If for some reason we lose contact here or connection with our Facebook live stream, we will go to our YouTube live stream. And what I'm going to be doing tonight is talking to you a little bit about our thoughts around transitioning back to school. We just did a thought exchange, and that is gone now, Mr. Extant. Trying to find my screen that I'll be presenting. It was up here. Bear with me for a second. Let me put my mask on. We got to get to the presentation that was up here through Google.
Okay, go to desktop.
I'm going to minimize that.
No, because you want share. You want to. You're sharing
right
your
here?
screen.
Right, this one?
Go to the. Yeah, what's that one say?
Desktop presenter.
Yes. Or no. You want. That one will work.
This one?
Yep.
Okay. But that's not the PowerPoint.
Okay. Go to the top one. Say screen.
Yep.
Okay. Share.
Okay.
Now go. Now move up there. Move your roll. There you
Gotcha.
go.
There we go. We're cooking. We're cooking. Thank you, everybody.
Go to present.
Yep, I got you. Thank you so much, everybody. Wow, thank you for your patience. We're in business here. I will be having my screen up here. I know that some people might be asking questions throughout this program. If I don't get to the questions, please know that we're going to collect them and then hopefully be able to respond to them as we move through this process. Again, Brett Provenzano here with Tim Sliz and Joyce Kostick, Board of Education members. We gave a thought exchange, and the thought exchange was on our transition. And as usual, we had incredible participation. The people that support our work here with Thought Exchange are just amazed with the amount of response that we get here in our Fairport community. We had 1,600 participants, 2,300 thoughts, 56,000, 57,000 ratings, and you can see that there are still some pending thoughts that are still being processed. And again, thank you very much for the level of care. Thank you very much for sharing your ideas. And we're going to spend some time going through those ideas. I'm thinking about a half hour, 40 minutes tops, just trying to be respectful of your time as we move through the transition And we're looking at creating a transition through the eyes of a child. And I think that lens will help us focus and make sure that we're taking care of what we feel is critical with all of our transitions coming back. And here are some of the big ideas. And if you look at the thought exchange, this Wordle that I presented, none of these words on here are surprising. People were concerned about safety, cleaning, what does the classroom look like, online education, that theme continues to be very important. Buses, the health and safety of our students and staff. This idea of fall, like what's happening in sports as well. We know that we've talked about, a possible, another situation where we may have to pause if there is another uptick with the virus. We know that the vaccination is very important. We're not really expecting a vaccination anytime soon. We will be monitoring and making sure that we're following all the precautions that we need to. But these were some of the big ideas that we had. If you take a look here, I'm going to break down the thought exchange. And I also want to mention that I will be sending out right after this a summary of the thoughts, and it's collated in a way and organized so you can make meaning of it, so you can continue to dig into what was important to the community. But after I get done talking a little bit about what was on the exchange, we will then go into what is our transition plan. I really want you to have a general idea of how we're going to configure ourselves to create a transition that supports our students, that makes it a safe transition back to school as we consider the next several months. The very first thing that we're looking at here is the reoccurrence. The top thoughts here, and these were the themes, the major themes that were rated, were going from left to right, the reoccurrence. Yeah. And what are we going to do if we have to go through another COVID experience? What are we going to have to do if we have to go back to online learning? What are some of the big questions regarding a second wave, if that should occur? Is there going to be a contingency plan? Those are some of the top thoughts around recurring. So many people had that on their mind, and it rated high. And I want you to know that as we go through the transition process, we're going to have some long-term recommendations. People were appreciative of the work that we did and grateful that we were doing the best that we could on such short notice. If you take a look at our data, the amount of online activity from March 31st to just this last week has increased significantly. Teachers, students are using the online platform in many different ways. We also know that we need to continue to improve and do a better job of being organized with our platforms. And as incredible as our teachers were, I think that we're only going to continue to improve upon it. And within such a short time, when there wasn't any formal process related to distance learning, our teachers, our curriculum and instruction team, kudos to all of them, rallied and put together activities that are moving the curriculum along, interacting with students. I'm talking to students and our teachers where they're getting incredible attendance. They're actually getting examples of work and creating time to have meaningful interactions. But we do know that distance learning is such an important part of our future conversation. And again, that was something that the community says, how can we learn from what we've experienced over the past 2 months? How will we ensure that the distance program works well, especially if this takes place again? And again, that goes back to the recurrence. And how do we make sure that our teachers have the tools and training to provide proper academic instruction online? And again, a top thought, those are some of the main themes around that idea. Communication and expectation. This includes questions about returning back to school this fall, or even this summer for that matter. How will positive cases be communicated to parents were some questions. sharing clear and concise expectations for September as soon as possible. And please know that we're constantly communicating with local area networks, Monroe County Executive Adam Bello, and of course our Monroe County Department of Health, Dr. Nettis has been such a great, Mendoza, excuse me, has been such a great partner, and we're really lucky to have networks, and we'll be learning from them and communicating those expectations as we move forward. And of course, Governor Cuomo's frequently communicating and giving updates. Another big piece is about the sanitation of our facilities. Right? How will we facilitate proper cleaning protocols? How will we evaluate and monitor them as necessary? We need to make sure that we're following protocols and increase hygiene to ensure that there is limited risk of spreading throughout our academic facilities. What does that look like in our schools? How does that look like in an elementary classroom versus a secondary classroom? We'll be talking a little about how we're going to try to get at those questions through our process that we're going to be engaging upon. Social distancing. What does that even look like in schools? Schools were meant to be active social places. We have ensembles that have 50 to 70, sometimes even more students, our cafeterias, buses, our hallways. All those things need to be looked at carefully. We need to make sure that we interact with our medical experts and make sure that if you're riding a bus or in a cafeteria, that we're meeting the standards that are going to be set forth. Curriculum next year. That's another piece that many of our families were concerned about, the academic gaps. How do we know where students are? Yes, it's been a little bit different. Yes, teachers have been connecting with students in many different ways, and we are well aware that we're going to work with our teachers, we're going to work with our curriculum and instruction team to meet students where they are. We will be meeting them where they are. I'm confident that our teachers will have the right resources, the capacity, and the know-how as we come back and move forward to meet students where they are. It will be challenging. We need to look at different ways to continue to talk about this idea of coherence. More than ever, curriculum coherence is going to play a big part as we bring people back, because we know that there'll be gaps. We know that it will be incumbent upon us to methodically fill those gaps in. And I also know that everyone is having gaps in their learning, not just in Fairport. But that doesn't give us any excuse not to address them. We're going to address them, and we're going to make it a priority. We're going to have a team. We have a team right now really looking at those details as we speak. Social emotional components. Of course, our community, feels incredibly strong about making sure that the social emotional needs of our students are a priority, and that we need to make sure as they come into our schools, how are students feeling has to be a main question. And when they come back, how do we naturally integrate this level of awareness, get baseline information so students can transition back to school? Because we know that if the health and safety and the social emotional well-being of our students aren't the priority, learning won't take place. We're going to put pieces together that will address those. Any thoughts from our board members who are here listening to this?
Well, it seems as though people are watching the news and hearing the same things. The reoccurrence is, the biggest thing there. And that's very present on my mind since Dr. Fauci has told us that it certainly will reoccur in the fall. That can just upend everything, or we hope it'll be minimal, or it won't be new to us at least. We will have tests and maybe even treatment, certainly not vaccines, but maybe treatment by that time. So, but I would guess that everyone is reading and listening to similar information, given, what's come in and is coming.
Mr. Sliz?
Brett, the 13 items you have listed here, I believe it's 13, no, it's 11. were those topics that you had put out and then parents had to react to this, or was this just all people just give their feedback and information?
This was all feedback and information. We asked a very specific question about, what are the things that are on their mind regarding a transition back to school. And
Okay.
these were the comments,
Okay.
and the algorithm of the technology that we were using, we were able to generate the themes, and these were the consistent themes.
Okay. Thank you. We have to also understand too that in the news, as you listen to the various different media outlets, that the initial disease, this virus, didn't seem to be hitting the children as hard as it did, but now there are some other viruses that are starting to, illnesses that are starting to come up that are now, experts are saying, are actually related to this virus. So it's getting a little bit more intricate and a little bit more complicated, especially where children are involved. So we need to continue to monitor that, which will also have an impact on how we address these 11 main concerns. And I'm sure these are not the only concerns, Brett, but these are the top 11 main concerns.
Yeah, these were the top 11 themes, and a lot of them, there's intersection points and continuing themes of health and safety. And not only is there concern for our students, there's concern with staff, and staff have concerns and interests that they need to safeguard as far as their health and well-being, and parents were mentioning that as well. So I appreciate that level of awareness that staff, and how that might impact teaching and learning. And those are things that it's incumbent upon us to process. Here are two additional comments that I think are very important to recognize. We will be going off of facts. A lot of people have been talking about the importance of facts, using factual data. We will be collaborating with the experts using CDC guidelines, our Monroe County networks relative to Dr. Mendoza and the guidelines set forth by the transition team with Bob Duffy and the team that he's leading throughout Monroe County. Monroe County superintendents and schools will be communicating and really trying to understand it together. And that level of collaboration is reassuring. The data that we use will be grounded in the facts as we know them, again, through our health experts. We have a medical director here in our school district who is tied to networks. Again, we have the Monroe County Department of Health networks that I just explained, and our local school networks. Special education is on our mind, making sure that students who need these services are getting these services, and how we can continue to try to serve those interests. In the very future, we'll probably be reaching out to families, always making sure that our students are being supported in that realm. And we're going to be asking ourselves, what's best for our students? And these are all things that our community thought were priorities. So anywhere between the 4.5 to 3.9 were high-level, high-interest pieces that really didn't fit into those categories per se, but I thought it was worth mentioning.
Brett, on your previous slide, what really stood out to me was the second highest was the thanks and positive feedback. That says a lot about our staff.
Again, I'm really proud of the fact of how they rallied. And there's this one slide that I really want to get to, and I'm going to scroll to it all the way to the bottom because it's worth showing it. But here are the number of meetings that are happening online. If you take a look just to the left, to the right, you see the gradual progression. But if you look on the vertical axis, you start out with, under 300, well under 300. Now you're upward of 500. Right? And those dips are the weekends. But you could see over the past several weeks the amount of online activity that has occurred. And the other calls in red and green and yellow are the amount of calls between logins. So, there's 26 to 50 login calls in that pink area. Yellow has 16 to 25, and so on and so forth. I won't read through it, but it's just impressive just the total number of calls that have increased. And we're going to continue to monitor this, and we'll talk more about it. It's part of that bigger picture of online learning and how do we continue to progress from an organization. But right here, just intuitively, this is what our staff has been able to do.
Yeah, and this was turning on a dime. This just happened to them as quickly as it happened to all of us, so it's pretty impressive what they have been able to do.
You know, one thing I need to say, and I don't want to turn this into a political conversation, but, you know, I know that there was talk about Governor Cuomo's statement this week regarding, you know, digital platforms, partnering with the Gates Foundation. And again, you know, there may be a place for us to improve here. And I think that's been the theme, is we can always improve. But I would also have to say that our schools are meant for interactions. Real learning takes place when you have groups of students together interacting, learning through their struggles, you know, the socialization that takes place at school, that really can't ever be replaced with a computer. Again, very powerful tools, distance learning. I think we're going to see an uptick in it. I'm looking forward to looking at how we do things and continuing to improve in this area. But I do think that schools are meant for students in buildings, in classrooms, interacting. The brick and mortar of our schools are incredibly important because it helps grow the individual. When students are looking at screens, when teachers are looking at screens, and I've talked to many students and I've talked to many teachers as well, and they would agree. The online learning, you know, there may never be another snow day again, sorry, but I do feel there's a place for it, but I think that the real place for learning is in our schools. Joyce and Tim, without making this, you know, not about that, but what are your thoughts? Because I know that there's interested parties out there, what our thoughts are. And these are your individual thoughts, I know.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And this went all the way back when we had our big discussions and our big groups a couple of years ago. Every time technology came into the conversation, there were those who said, oh, we need more. But our teachers always said, you know, I want to talk to my students and look them in the eye and meet with them. They've done a spectacular job on this year because they had to. But I hope it is sooner rather than later that we get kids in the classroom in whatever configuration and, you know, distancing and everything else, but get them in a room with the teachers, because that's where teachers do their best work and that's where children learn the best.
And I see where in education, having been in that for 30 years, that there is a place for distance learning. There's a place for online learning. I'm sure we have some of our students who are actually thriving in this environment because this is where their comfort zone is. And I think we need to continue to remind ourselves that we do have children who do thrive in this type of learning environment. And we need to continue to make sure that we're meeting those needs as well. But I think there's a great opportunity to have a great mix and a blend here.
Right. And you know, Mr. Sliz, you said this, and I actually learned this from you, is there's so much learning that occurs on the playground. And I know that,
in the cafeteria, in the hallway.
Yeah. So again, I'll get off my soapbox. We'll be talking more about that. I'm sure the whole board has thoughts about that as we move along. But I appreciate your thoughts. Again, I won't continue to belabor these points. The transition plan. What can you expect as a community as we try to tackle these very important themes? Our teachers have themes too that are similar to these, but we are going to create a transition plan to the eyes of a child. We're going to use the guidance and recommended best practices from, again, Governor Cuomo has his regulations and his executive orders that are continuing to come out. We're going to heed those. The CDC has given incredible amounts of information about what our new social distancing in schools need to look like? What are the things that we need to consider? We are in constant contact with Monroe County Department of Health and our experts from around the county on what are the best practices. Our BOCES is highly connected to the best practices in cleaning and sanitation as well that will be supported by these recommended best practices and guidance. We're going to continue to seek feedback. A thought exchange occurred. We've had incredible amounts of feedback. This is one area where we're going to try to get your feedback from the chats. I know I'm not able to fluidly get at those right now, but you know, if there's time at the end, we'll try to get to those chats. And I may be addressing some of your questions as we move forward. But feedback, we'll be doing more town halls in this forum as we move forward. Understand potential scenarios and the inherent variables. There's so many different scenarios. In a perfect world, we would transition in the summer. We would have an opportunity to bring certain groups of students back so we can have case studies. So then we can seamlessly move forward to the fall. We're still waiting on guidance. We do not have guidance on what the summer will look like. We do not have guidance on what the fall will look like. It depends on what's happening in our community. That's why it's important that we continue to follow the social distancing guidelines, that we use our masks, that we are very careful to follow and make sure that we're continuing the actual habits that have helped bend the curve, that have helped the healthcare workers manage it in a way that's responsive and so they can give the best care to patients. So we're going to be hearing.
Brett, may I interject just for a moment while I got this on my mind?
Yes, go for it.
You mentioned masks. You mentioned masks, and this Saturday and next Wednesday, we are, the town of Parenton, through, in conjunction with the village, in conjunction with the New York State Assembly, is going to be distributing masks. The county has been able to use some of the federal money to purchase masks for every individual. I think a few masks for every individual. So that'll be at the town hall. I just wanted to say that while you mentioned the word mask.
So we've also tweeted that
this Saturday and Wednesday.
We've tweeted that out on our social media as well, so we'll continue to do so. But within the scenarios,
Thank you.
Within the scenarios, we'll be identifying constraints, priorities, and then we'll be synthesizing the collective thoughts into a plan. And then we'll be communicating this plan and then operationalizing it and continuing to monitor and adjust. These are the goals of our plan, because what we know today will be different tomorrow. And what we know tomorrow could also be changed. It's a fluid situation. I think it's just important that you sort of see that overall we are mobilizing as an organization, and these are the goals of our transition plan. These are the people involved, or the stakeholder groups involved. You can see that there's a number of different groups that will be feeding the transition plan. Once we determine what that plan will be, is it a partial in the summer, or is it continued online in the summer? Or are we thinking about a full transition back to school in the fall? Or a half transition, some hybrid of approaches? And I know many people are attuned to what other communities are doing or what other countries are doing with the transition back to school. But we don't have that guidance. We have groups of people right now working on different scenarios, taking in all the information that you have shared. These pieces will be playing into the plans that we create. And you can see pretty much everyone in our organization, in our school community, will be engaging with experts in those areas to help create the plan. Again, we understand that there's multiple scenarios. We, at some point, will be talking about the scenarios that we are obligated to fulfill. and we'll be learning about what those will be in the coming weeks. The recommendations from our local leaders, our governor, state education department, the Monroe County Department of Health, and the CDC will be followed to the T. We'll make sure that we're doing our best to always stay connected to those networks. Again, the focus will be on social emotional wellness. Again, we know that students will not learn, they will not flourish if this piece is not in place. Parental and staff questions and or concerns, we'll continue to build upon them. Educational plans, including transitions for summer and fall. Maybe it's just fall, maybe it's summer online and fall, or no summer and fall only. But those combinations will be dictated to us and shared with us in the coming weeks. We need to make sure that we mobilize our resources right now. PPE, we're trying to gather as much of that as possible. We know that those will be items, and I'll be talking a little bit about that as we move through our transition and the different groups that are involved. There's many operations and logistical pieces from transportation, food service, and maintenance. You could put our school nurses in this realm too. So many pieces that we're trying to coordinate, and that's what our leaders are doing right now in its beginning stages. Again, waiting for certainty, but we are preparing ourselves and mobilizing right now in teams. Again, multiple scenarios. The recommendations from our experts. Site management, our principals are all focusing in on what that looks like. The master schedule, lunch, transitioning between periods. The operational logistics of our schools from transporting students. If we can't put, 40, 50 kids on a bus, what does that look like? How do we social distance on a bus? How do we clean the bus? Buildings and grounds is instrumental. The new sanitation requirements, being up to speed with those and making sure that we put sanitation stations, strategic spots throughout our school. Food service, again, a place where social distancing really, it's actually counterintuitive. And we'll be looking at those pieces. Our ensembles, it's not listed, but our hallways, all operations and logistics. What does 6 feet look like to a kindergartner? How do you model that to a second or a third grader? It's different than what happens at a secondary level, that's for sure. When I say operations and logistics, when I talk about site management, that's what I'm talking about. Again, the social emotional components have a group right now focusing, looking at our process on how do we support our students, how do we get baseline information as to where they are social emotionally, because we know the mental health needs of our students, their well-being is the priority. The academic plans, the curriculum and instruction team, teacher leaders are all around this. The continuity that has started will need to continue. We are committed to, and it's been an educational programming priority, we have been committed to building this curricular coherence. We're only going to continue to build upon that. That's good from an educational practice. That's a best practice that supports student achievement. We've started and we've done it. My hats are off to the curriculum and instruction team. The teacher leaders, which includes our instructional coaches, our lead teachers, have been incredibly focused on creating and providing resources to teachers, particularly in the K-5 arena. Thank you very much. Parental concerns, we're going to have PTSA involved, possibly another thought exchange, more town halls like this forum, if we're not able to come together. Staff is very important to this. We'll have collective bargaining units. We have our collective bargaining units and contracts that we need to honor, but at the same time look at them, if there's real needs that they have from a health, safety, wellness perspective, social, emotionally, we need to make sure that they're supported so they can be the best for our students and each other. In this piece about recommendations for all. So all these groups will be providing recommendations, okay? Because we know that from the concerns that we have identified, there'll be recommendations, not just to get through the immediate, but to think about the future. We need to project, and that means distance learning. That means if there's a reoccurrence. That means, social distancing. What does that look like moving forward? Curriculum and instruction. What are recommendations and long-term plans around that? These transition teams will be communicating with an oversight team. This is a multidisciplinary oversight team. That includes our student representatives that we'll have, Sam Farina, our town supervisor, Kara Hannon, and we have 2 board members, Tim Sliz and Joyce Kostic, who will constantly be reporting to the overall board and bringing these conversations into that forum. We have 2 PTSA representatives, Kelly Hodge and Sarah Driscoll, representing K-5. Sarah Driscoll and Kelly Hodge will be representing 612. Our nurse facilitator, Colleen Cole, our medical director, Dr. Julie Leonard, director of student services and safety coordinator, Deborah Miles, assistant superintendent for human resources, Doug Loff, and assistant superintendent for business, Matt Stevens. And of course, I will be a part of the oversight team. And again, the oversight team will be learning from these groups: principals, transportation directors, buildings and grounds, food service professionals, our student service, which includes our mental health professionals, our psychologists and social workers and counselors, our education and academic plans, our lead teachers, our teacher leaders, from our coaches to our curriculum and instruction and administrative team. The PTSA will be meeting with our unit leaders so they're informed, so they can in turn communicate with their constituents. And on the other side of this, I will have these same conversations with our school members, as I did previously this week. What's next? Our internal teams that I just spoke of, again, our internal teams that I just spoke of, will be seeking clarity regarding the multiple different scenarios. And there's too many to say that we have one at this point in time. There's too many unknowns. Teachers are part of the transition plan. If you take a look at the transition plan, where it says principals will be connecting with lead teachers, with bargaining leaders in the building, collective bargaining leaders in the building. Lead teachers will be a part of the curriculum and instruction components of this as well. Principals will be communicating the many different moving parts. I think teachers are incredibly important to this whole process because at the end of the day, they're going to be with the kids. Our support staff are going to be with the kids. So we're going to be getting as much feedback as possible. We did a thought exchange with staff asking the similar question as we did to the community, and we received 600 different responses from our staff. And I'll be doing another town hall with them in the very near future, reviewing what was their priorities. Again, very similar to the priorities that were shared here. Building leaders will be talking to their constituents or their families about end of the year collection of materials. What are we doing with the over 900 computers that we have lent out happily? What are we doing with instruments? What about locker, desk cleanups? Students need to get back in the building. We need to do it in a thoughtful, methodical way. Building leaders understand the parameters, are learning about the parameters, and we'll be creating a plan that's done so in a thoughtful way. Right now, we are under the guidance that we cannot assemble more than 50 people. And when we do assemble, we need to make sure that masks are in hand, social distancing rules are applied. So 50 or less until we hear differently. And we are going to be making plans about getting the materials organized. We know that there needs to be meaningful closure to the school year. Rites of passages, celebrations of learning, yearbook distribution. We have graduation. We know that that's happening. Mr. Clark and a group of students and staff today had an incredible conversation about possible scenarios. Last night we did a thought exchange process with the community via FaceTime Live as well. So there'll be more information on closure. But we also know closure needs to occur in our K-5 buildings as well as our 6, 8 buildings and for our 9th through 11th graders as well. So please stay tuned. Principals will be communicating those as we move along. We're not going to keep bringing students back. We're going to be thoughtful and try to consolidate opportunities, especially as we continue to follow our expectations and rules around social distancing. We also know that we need to develop grade level transition plans for next year. There's probably not a more important transition than the pre-K to K. And we're going to be looking at ways to transition our new students to school. Those going from 5 to 6 need to hear from principals on what that's going to look like. 8 to 9, 9 to 10 are other transitions, especially as we start into new buildings. Principals are aware of that. So on top of these transition plans, right, they are developing plans and will be communicating expectations around the aforementioned. The end of the school year, we do not have an official date. Hopefully by the end of next week, we'll be able to put some information out there on an official end to the school year. The May 22nd will be a regular school day. May 25th is Memorial Day. There will be no school sessions on that day. It's a federal holiday, and we will honor May 25th, Memorial Day. By June 5th, we'll have another town meeting. And that means by, so it could be before June 5th, a week before June 5th, but it's just important that we continue to try to communicate with the community at large, because as we learn information, we will then hopefully be able to feed it into our transition plan. If we get clarity that summer is a go, or a hybrid summer with a full fall, before then, we'll definitely rally around that information and share what we know by June 5th. I really think it's important that there's a call to action, that we seek direct dollars, federal dollars, to our state and funnel to our schools. I know that there's been talk of another federal stimulus package that will help offset lost tax revenue. Fairport, 3.5% of our budget is funded by our tax revenues, and we are anticipating anywhere from $800,000 to $1.2 million loss in revenue for next year's budget. That is...
Brett, just to clarify, that's sales tax revenue, not
Yes.
total tax.
Yes, sales tax revenue. This information, I'll continue to put it in my newsletters. We've been using our social media. We have sample letters for you. We have a directory there so you can make sure that you have the right congressional delegate that you're advocating to. So please, for the benefit of our students, we know that students have lost ground. We know that there's been disruptions in learning. We know that mental health services are going to be at a premium. We know that we're going to have to continue to find ways to support our students in ways that we can't even imagine now. Personal protective equipment, that was not in our vocabulary, 3 months ago barely, right? We didn't know much about that. Now it's going to be commonplace. All that impacts our budget. So please take some time to advocate federal stimulus dollars to offset the gaps that the state is experiencing, that Governor Cuomo has spoken about so frequently. Right now, he's projecting a 20% reduction in our school aid next year. Our foundation aid, which is a significant portion of our budget, it looks like that there will be reductions with our foundation aid. And again, we receive up to $42 million in foundation aid, and we're projecting to lose approximately anywhere from $2 million to $5 million in foundation aid next year, based upon what the governor has projected. The economy, you've seen the statistics. You know that the pause has dramatically impacted those who are seeking unemployment insurance. Businesses have gone bankrupt, have closed as a result of this. So this is all impacting the economy and impacting the stock market, and that will cause a lot of volatility and uncertainty, and the federal stimulus will be so important. So please take some time to advocate, send a letter to your congressperson. If you take a look about the budget and budget process, the board has been talking about it in these same platforms. May 11th, there'll be a special meeting, Board of Education adoption. Public hearing will be on May 26th for the budget proposal. On June 9th, the annual budget and Board of Elections will occur. Voting will occur via absentee ballot, okay? Ballots will be mailed to voters' homes and returned to the district by 5 p.m. on Tuesday, June 9th, to be valid. This is different than we've ever done. We'll be mailing information out to the community at large, trying to get absentee ballots in our community members' hands. We'll be asking people to request absentee ballots if we don't send you enough in an upcoming mailing. Again, this is our new normal for this year. This is dictated by the governor. Voting's very important, and Tuesday, June 9th will be our new annual budget vote date. And all votes must be mailed in via absentee ballot, and ballots will be mailed home to voters, and they must be returned by 5 p.m. on Tuesday to be valid. Tuesday, June 9th, to be valid. Mr. Sliz, did you want to say
The
something?
district has to receive it by 5 that day.
Correct.
Yeah, the district has to receive that ballot by 5 p.m. Tuesday.
Correct.
So, make sure you mail it a few days in advance, because every school district in the state is going to be doing this, so the post office is going to be very busy. They're going to have it's going to be an interesting situation. So the sooner you get that ballot in, the better it'll be. I think it's important also to understand that no matter how we progress here, everyone is going to have a level of discomfort. This is not going to be easy for any group that you put up on your slide there, Brett. All groups are affected, and all groups will have some level of discomfort as we progress and continue to discover how we're going to be educating children in our new normal, which will hopefully be in September. So it's important that everyone understands that, yes, we all have to bear that burden of some discomfort, but ultimately we have to do what's best and safest for our kids. And it's important that we continue to repeat that.
And I think it's important to recognize that we know that, many of our staff, many of our community members, many of our families have been impacted by this, from a health perspective, from an economic perspective. And we don't take that lightly. We know that there's people that are really having different ways or engaging with this differently and processing it differently. And as we transition, we know that, we're going to have to monitor and adjust. We know that that we're going to have to look at things differently. We know that we need to get better at certain areas, but we also know, we understand what our community's priorities are. That thought exchange was very helpful. There'll be more opportunities to connect. I'll be reaching out. We'll be doing more town halls. I truly believe, as I look at this quote by Franklin Delano Roosevelt, I know he was talking about World War II and what was happening with the great amount of sacrifice that occurred and all the heroic and tragic pieces that came with World War II. This is our generation's next great feat. We will come together. We will come out stronger. Our students will build resiliency. Our families will continue to look upon each other to support each other. I think that we will all emerge. Fairport will emerge. We will lean on each other and make the very core of who we are stronger. Even though at times, it seems like we're taking one or two steps backwards, but we'll surge ahead 3 or 4 more steps forward. And that's what strong communities do. That's what strong families do. We will continue to have conversations in the very near future on transitioning. I hope that you felt like we were able to give you some good guidance as to what that looks like from our perspective. So Mr. Extant, if you want to show me how to get to the Facebook Lives from here, and I could look at closing off here. So I stopped sharing.
Yeah, stop sharing.
So just minimize it?
Then go down to the little,
Right here?
yep, no, other one, the blue one.
Yeah. Right here?
Yep.
Right here?
Then you can stop, then just shut your name.
I'm still on Facebook Live, so I want to say I want to get on Facebook Live here.
Oh, just stop sharing and you're on.
I did. Stop.
You're on.
I know, but I'm trying to get to the chat. I want to see the chat. Get to, I apologize, but thank you for tuning in, and I'm grateful for our incredible community. I embrace it all, and I know the Board of Education will look forward to talking more about this in the future. Do you want to say some closing thoughts, Joyce or Tim?
I just think we're all going to have to be patient. We don't know what's ahead. I know, Brett, that you're going to go completely on the guidance from the medical community, science, all of the data. Much of this is not in our hands, and we're just going to have to wait for that guidance or executive orders, if that's what the governor decides to do in some cases. And we'll all go through it together and do the best that we can. And I know, Brett, that you'll lead this well, and as I say, listen to all of the science, because that's what's most important here.
Mr. Sliz, any closing thoughts?
And as kids know, when you're working on a project or you're working on a writing piece, our kids know that the biggest and one of the most important steps is the brainstorming, where nothing is off the table and everything is compiled, and then from there you start to weed out. And this is one of those scenarios where all of us, we're going to put things and we're going to come up with some ideas that back in January sounded so off base, but in today's world here, the 7th of May, might make a lot of sense. And we also have to understand that there are going to be some situations and some decisions that are made that some people might not understand the reasoning behind it. But as Joyce said, once we bring in all of the science and all of the facts that go with this virus, I think we'll use that to help us make justifications for the decisions that we're going to make. And it will look different. School will look different. And we have to embrace it. And let's take the difference and make it the new normal for now. And I think a lot of good things can come out of this.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be a part of this incredible community. To our Board of Education, thank you for the support and leadership through this time. We've had many conversations, lots of interest and passion to continue and make sure that we're giving our students and our community the best that they expect and deserve. Signing off for now. Looking forward to seeing everybody, whether it's on an online platform or out and about with our masks, socially distanced, as we move through this new normal. Please stay tuned for further updates. Thank you and good night.
Thank you.
I think I might still be on, Jim.
I think you're still. Go to Facebook. Okay, shut that down.
Sure.
Just close it.
Right here?
Yeah. There you go.
So is that the delay?
Yeah.
How many people are on, Tony?
230.